100 billion ringgit capital injection for Sarawak, delivering skilled workforce, tourism competitiveness. Those are the headlines for tonight. I'm Lorenzo Isaac and this is TVS Nightline. Sarawak is expected to see more than 100 billion ringgit injection of capital into the state's economy in the next 8 years as it moves towards becoming a developed state by 2030. Premier of Sarawak, Dato' Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg said the amount which is expected to come from the government and private sectors is higher than the initial target of 64 billion ringgit before.
In other words, our 64 billion ringgit investment injection into economy by the government as well as the private sector was very, very conservative. Now, more or less, we have 100 billion ringgit to be injected into our economy up to the year 2030.
He said this in his speech at the Memorandum of Understanding MOU signing ceremony between Sarawak Energy and Construction Industry Development Berhad at Borneo Convention Centre, Kuching, BCCK, on Tuesday. At the same time, he said Sarawak's upcoming 2 gas separation plants will attract further investments to the state as well. He pointed out that with more investments coming, this would mean a higher demand for skilled and competent workers. He said the training of local workers will prevent such delays from happening again in the event of a future crisis of similar nature, as the state will be fully prepared with a sufficient local competent workforce.
We have not included the investment in our hydrogen plant. From investment from Sumitomo as well as Samsung. That will be a few billion ringgit.
Capacity building program and enchantments intended for skilled construction personnel is vital in adopting the best practices to be implemented in Sarawak. Such effort will be made possible through a collaboration between Sarawak Energy Berhad (SCB) and Construction Industry Development Board Malaysia (CIDB) as the two parties ink a Memorandum of Understanding. The scope of collaboration covers training, assessment and accreditation of a total of 20 SCB projects that involves 100 plant and crane operators, 200 scaffolders and 80 construction site supervisors at the initial stage. Premier of Sarawak, Dato' Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg said through such synergy, local contractors can source workers locally in the building up of a capacity and capabilities of manpower in Sarawak, therefore minimizing the dependency of opting workforce from abroad.
This need was made very evident during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we faced significant shortage of workers due to non-arrival of foreign workers caused by COVID-related restriction that has led to project delays.
At the same time, this will also benefit project delivery, as exemplified by the timely delivery of Sarawak energy substation projects, which are largely dependent on local workforce. The Sarawak government is amplifying its effort to enhance the infrastructure and hospitality services to attract more premium tourists to the state. Premier of Sarawak, Dato' Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg said this is to ensure that Sarawak remains the top tourism destination among tourists, which contributes largely to the state's economy.
Number one, when you see that we are updating our infrastructure, road. One is Pen Borneo, the other one is coastal road, meaning mobility. People are mobile. If tourists want to enjoy our coastal area, they just take a ride on a car and enjoy. Number two, we have to build a lot of meeting places. Tonight, I want to share with you that we have decided to extend our convention center, another building. That will allow not only convention, but also for exhibition. A right place for exhibition in Kuching. We hope it will be completed by the year 2024, because we are going to have a major convention here on hydrogen. And the other one is want to build in Miri, another convention center.
Abang Johari added that the state government has planned to establish a medical center near Santubong Beach. This medical center would be a new form of attraction for the medical tourism industry, which indirectly contributes to the tourism sector of the state.
But one thing, we also want to improve our awareness. It's a sort of, from the medical point of view, because the water is oxygen. And this oxygen will reinstate your energy and can fight diseases, including cancer. And we are going to have this wellness center also in Damai.
He said this when speaking at the Malaysia Hotel Association dinner on Monday night.
Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob emphasised on the need for civil servants to defend the government against any allegation, while looking at him as the head of the government and not as a political party leader.
Jadi sebab itulah saya hari ini bersama dengan tuan-tuan dan puan-puan merupakan kaki dan tangan kepada kerajaan. Membantu untuk menyebarluaskan berita baik ini kepada rakyat. Jangan kita biarkan ada pihak tertentu yang cuba memburukkan kerajaan, mengatakan kerajaan gagal segala-galanya sehingga hari ini tidak ada perubahan yang berlaku. Malah 1 tahun adalah 1 tahun yang gagal. Ini merupakan satu fitnah jahat kepada kerajaan, dan tuan-tuan dan puan-puanlah yang sepatutnya mempertahankan perkara ini. Mempertahankan kerajaan bukan mempertahankan parti politik.
Ismail Sabri added that the government is a joint government, which is why the concept of the Malaysian family was introduced, emphasizing that civil servants should work as a family and not in silos. On a separate note, the Prime Minister took the opportunity to thank all civil servants for their perseverance and support in various matters. Meanwhile, on the government's cooperation with the opposition through the Memorandum of Understanding MOU on transformation and political stability, Ismail Sabri said it was to enable the government to focus on big things such as political stability and recovery of the country's economy. Adding to that, he said that it is through the MOU that the anti-party hopping bill was passed, even though it was hotly debated in Parliament. On a similar note, Ismail Sabri stressed that in order to further scale up in economic growth, civil servants need to look into easing bureaucracy toward investors, a concern conveyed by many to himself when being aboard, and thus the matter has to be addressed to be simplified not only at the federal level but also at the local authority level.
Saya keluar negara, berjumpa dengan pelabur dan sebagainya. Isu yang mereka bangkitkan adalah, isu yang utama adalah dari segi kerana birokrasi. Terlalu banyak perkara yang besar pun, tapi semua kementerian akan terlibat. Banyak kementerian yang terlibat dalam perkara yang sama. Akhirnya menyebabkan kelewatan. Bagi pelabur, bagi peniaga, masa adalah sangat penting. Lewat kelulusan akan menyebabkan kerugian kepada mereka.
As such, the government has agreed to set up My Mudah unit to deal with bureaucratic issues.
As the current blanket subsidy scheme is estimated to hit 80 billion ringgit this year, the government is in the midst of formulating a more targeted approach for distributing subsidies to ensure that economic assistance only flows to those who really need it, particularly the B40 group.
As such, according to Bank Negara Malaysia BNM Governor Tan Sri Nur Syamsiah Muhammad Yunus, the best time for the country to transition from blanket to targeted subsidies is when the country is no longer facing high inflationary pressures. JUI Chief Economist Shan Said noted that it is the government's commitment in addressing any challenges in the bid to lift the people of these difficult times.
I think it's up to the government to decide, but overall the government is cognizant of the fact that they want to support the masses and they want to lift the masses out of these challenging times. It's not easy. Yes, the times are very tough. We are navigating through tempestuous times globally, but overall I think yes, there are challenges, but the government has been able to maintain economic confidence, not only for local investors but global investors. Look at consumption patterns. If I were to tell you, some of my friends, they have traveled, 90% have traveled, 40% have traveled twice, 10% have traveled 3 times. So that gives a boost, to the government, that overall people have confidence in the economy. And yes, the challenges are there, and the government is totally committed to address those challenges so that, to lift the people out of these challenging times.
At the same time, the implementation of targeted subsidies must account for 2 things, namely the current inflationary environment and that it should be done in phases. Meanwhile, on August 9th, Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz reportedly said that considering the high global inflation, it is still too early to introduce targeted subsidies in Budget 2023. For the record, Malaysia's Consumer Price Index rose to a 12-month high of 3.4% in June 2022, led by a rise in food prices. However, the figure is much lower than the global average of 6.7% and 5.6% in emerging economies due to the blanket fuel subsidy and the government halting an increase in electricity tariffs for households while slowing the rate of increase for commercial end users. As such, BNM has forecast the headline inflation to average between 2.2% and 3.2% this year, compared with Malaysia's long-term average of 1.6%.
It may be one of the most familiar words in economics. Inflation has plunged countries into long periods of instability, with a broad measure on the overall increase in prices or the increase in the cost of living in a country. Whatever the context, inflation represents how much more expensive the relevant of goods and services have become over a certain period. Is the public aware of the price hike and the measures to cope up with it? Here is what they have to say earlier today.
Kami dah business about 6 months dekat situ. Jadi kami nak merasalah sebelum kenaikan harga dengan selepas. So contohnya kini tu memang ada berasa dari segi bahan mentah. Contoh untuk giant squid, sotong buncit yang besar ya. Dulu kami dapat beli dengan sekilo harganya RM14, now jadi sekilo RM18. Jadi gap kenaikan harga ya RM4 ya sangat-sangat tinggi. Sebagai peniaga memang kami orang terpaksa je lah. Mau si mau terpaksa naikkan sikit harga jualan lah.
Berasa lah barang naiknya itu. lagi-lagi ada anak, pampers semua naik, barang susu naik.
Kenetok lebih menaik lah sebab pasaran dunia kenetok nak mengefek kita pun duit lah. Jadi duit kita rasa duit terlalu sikit nilainya kenetok bandingkan dulu lah.
When asked on comparing their spending now and back then, this is what they have to say.
Mun dulu kami rasa ada kenaikan yang sampai 3 kali ganda lah kami rasa kenetok. Ada part ialah untuk barang-barang belajar ambil lah. Yang paling ketara ialah barang keperluan asas lah. Mun pakai nanggung kehidupan kita macam makanan lah yang paling berasa sekali kenetok. Yang lain kami rasa ya lebih pada spekulasi barang lah. Ada orang peniaga hanya cuba naikkan barang lah untuk gen tidak. Kami siapa salahkan tidak jalan sebab kos kehidupan kenetok semua nanggung.
Perbelanjaan memang kenetok terpaksa kontrol supaya terlebih daripada bajet yang ada. Tapi dalam masa yang sama kami orang mau cukup bahan mentah untuk dijual, diserve kepada pelanggan lah. Si dapat dia nak madah, oh tu sedah sebahagian naik. Si boleh juga. Sebab dari segi customer ya, kami orang kena mesti mau ada barang lah untuk diserve.
As inflation is on the rise, Malaysia is one of the few countries that managed to keep it in low levels of average of 2 to 3%. Whether you are a wealthy businessman or even a simple housewife, the changes of prices of goods and services will affect everyone as consumers. But will this be a short-term thing, or is it something that become more serious in the future? We will see. My name is Ahmad Azlan Shah with videographer Muhammad Nasrullah reporting for TVS.
Coming up right after the break, 40% of renewable energy installation by 2035. Halal sector development on a global scale. Right here on TVS Nightline. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Malaysia has reached 23% installation of renewable energy and is planning to hit 40% by 2035. The Energy and Natural Resources Deputy Minister, Dato' Ali Biju, said Malaysia's transition of electricity supply system towards a low-carbon energy system is outlined in the Malaysia Renewable Energy Roadmap, which focuses on the increasing on the share of 4 key renewable energy resources, namely solar, biomass, biogas and hydro, through a balanced yet sustainable approach.
He said the push for energy transition has become much stronger over the past few years. According to him, Malaysia now houses the largest CCGT in Southeast Asia and is one of the largest gas-fired power generators in this region. He said by phasing out coal, natural gas has become the cleanest burning fossil fuel that can supplement intermittent RE sources as well as ensure a reliable electricity supply.
Malaysia is actively cooperating with 9 countries on the development of the global halal sector. Deputy Minister of International Trade and Industry, Datuk Lim Ban Hong, said the countries are Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, Russia, South Korea, Japan and Taiwan. The cooperation is in the form of the development of the halal industry ecosystem framework to accelerate economic cooperation and integration between countries and connectivity between regional markets. It will also boost economic growth opportunities for halal products and services through expanding market access, encouraging Muslim-friendly tourism activities, and promoting foreign investment into the respective countries. He said the sharing of Malaysia's halal industry expertise is done strategically to form a more comprehensive global halal industry ecosystem, considering that the global halal industry is expected to reach $1 trillion by 2030, based on the Halal Industry Master Plan 2030. At the same time, he added that the cooperation could promote greater transparency, information sharing, trade facilitation, economic cooperation, as well as the standardization of international standards and regulations related to Malaysian halal certification, which will open up a wider market for the local halal industry. Additionally, the cooperation will also promote halal products made in Malaysia and encourage more foreign investments into the halal industry, subsequently creating new job opportunities. This collaboration is also to identify the availability of raw materials that can be obtained in the countries involved at more competitive prices, and it will also strengthen the integration of the local halal industry's raw material supply chain. Lim added that such cooperation will also encourage technology sharing in the manufacturing of halal products and the development of talents in the global halal industry, which will have a positive impact on the local small and medium enterprises. The cost of electricity tariff adjustment through the imbalance cost pass-through ICPT mechanism from the period of July to December 2022 is estimated to reach almost 20 billion ringgit. Energy and Natural Resources Minister Datuk Sri Taqiyuddin Hassan said the amount was 3 times higher than the 7 billion ringgit cost recorded from January to June this year.
Bayangkanlah, dengan 7 bilion sepatutnya secas 11.81 sen per kilowatt jam. Kalau hampir 20 bilion Tuan Diputor, kita amat bimbang perkara ini. Atas dasar inilah kerajaan sedang mengkaji langkah-langkah yang perlu diambil, antaranya, ini saya sebut antara, ini kajian sedang dibuat. Antaranya subsidi yang mungkin diberikan oleh kerajaan di masa depan adalah bersasar.
He said this in a reply to a supplementary question from Senator Dr. Wan Martina Wan Yusof, who wanted to know the measures taken by the government to help the people in facing the global energy crisis. Responding to Wan Martina's original question on the measures that have been taken by the government to ensure that there is no increase in electricity tariffs, Taqiyuddin said that among the efforts taken was prioritizing the use of least cost fuel dispatched for electricity generation. He said the ministry had also prepared a long-term generation development plan that sets the direction for the country's electricity supply planning. The government also planned to increase the share of renewable energy in its installed capacity to 31% in 2025 and 40% in 2035 under the Malaysia Renewable Energy Roadmap. Now on to some global affairs. Health officials identified the virus that causes polio in New York City wastewater, suggesting local transmission of the virus, state authorities said on Tuesday, August 15, urging unvaccinated New Yorkers to get vaccinated. The identification comes week after a case of polio in an adult was made public on July 21st in Rockland County, marking the nation's first confirmed cases in nearly 10 years. Earlier this month, health officials said the virus was found in wastewater in the New York City suburb a month before health officials announced the Rockland County case. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, said at the same time it was not yet clear whether the virus was actively spreading in New York or elsewhere in the United States. There is no cure for polio, which can cause irreversible paralysis in some cases, but it can be prevented by a vaccine made available in 1955. New York officials have said they are opening vaccine clinics to help unvaccinated residents to get their shots. Polio is often asymptomatic and people can transmit the virus even when they do not appear sick. But it can produce mild flu-like symptoms that can take up as long as 30 days to appear. It can strike at any age, but the majority of those affected are children aged 3 and younger. Fu Chao food may not be as popular as Cantonese or Hakka cuisine in Kuching, but the Fu Chao community here takes great pride in their traditional delicacies. To know more about Fu Chao traditional food, join Muhammad Sadikin, Kampua Mi Seller on Sejahtera Asia tomorrow with hosts Jessica Chung and Wan Ghazali, 7:45 a.m. only on TVS Astro Channel 122 and My Freeview. See the world closer with TVS as we bring you the latest news updates both locally and internationally. Just head to our official website at TVSTVMY or follow us on our social media platforms. That's all the time we have for TVS Nightline. I'm Lorenzo Isaac. Thank you for watching.